to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
California. Let's talk about California.
Yeah.
And states' laws.
Sure.
Kind of like big picture. What I was looking up some stuff before you got here, and there was one video that was like 13 minutes on YouTube that I hadn't seen yet, but it has over like 2 million views. What's it called, Andrew?
Fleeing California.
Fleeing California, and it was put out by
Prager. Is that
Prager, which I think is a conservative.
It is. Yeah. It's Dennis Prager. Yeah.
But anyhow, the video was interesting. So I'm assuming, the video is made in such a way to reinforce their viewpoints or
absolutely,
the direction they want people to go or whatever, their philosophies and political views and stuff.
Right.
However, at least so far what I was seeing in the video, it was mostly fact-based, and it was pretty fascinating. What I find interesting right now is, don't you think that right now we have playing out in America sort of a real-life, in-our-face case study of kind of a more liberal / socialist kind of political viewpoint as compared to a more capitalist / conservative, and which one is going to, where's it working? You know what I mean? Can't we look at states right now and see, all right, well, that's your political viewpoint, that's your philosophy, and how's that working for you?
Right.
And then, and you can look, I think the two best states to compare is California and Texas. I mean, those are the states that are commonly compared.
Right.
And with California, you have a very liberal, Democrat sort of, more left-wing.
They got.
I guess in some way a little bit more socialist. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, they have a supermajority in the state legislature. So it's a great experiment to see.
And then you can compare that to a state like Tennessee, or maybe even a better example is Texas, and we can kind of see, what's working and what's not, I guess.
Right.
And I mean, there's always things that it's not a complete apples to apples comparison because, for example, California is like their biggest export is entertainment, right? I mean, that's the big one.
Yeah, so I think and like information, IP, intellectual property is probably a better way to say it. So it'd be entertainment in the Silicon Valley, so all that kind of stuff too.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So what are your thoughts on what's working, what's not, as you look at the different states and their political viewpoints and so forth? What are you seeing in America right now?
Well, I think the question you'd ask is, where are people moving to? Right. So, where are people flocking towards? So that kind of tells you a lot. And obviously people are flocking towards those low tax, high growth areas, which right now is a lot of the Bible Belt, the South, and then some of the Midwest, and then going that way. So, and they're fleeing the coastal cities, and it's interesting because that's a unique thing to America right now. People like millennials are leaving big metropolises like LA and Chicago and New York, and they're moving towards smaller cities like Nashville and Austin or whatever. And that's not true in the rest of the world. Big metropolises like Beijing are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Middle Eastern cities like in Turkey, those are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But in America, they're actually going to different smaller cities. Pretty cool.
Why is that?
I don't know. I guess Americans are a little different. I guess sometimes we. That's interesting. I'm not sure. People want. I think the idea of like that small town life, a simpler life, that kind of thing, where people around you, is revered and I guess idolized in America.
Do you think it's also because when you look at internationally, like you mentioned, Beijing is a good example where those big cities are still growing?
Yeah.
Do you think it's that if you look at your other options of where to live there, you're not going to have a difference in laws or regulations or maybe even lifestyle? Probably lifestyle, because if you live in the country, that would be a very different lifestyle. But you don't have the differences in taxation and regulation.
Sure, like the federal system, like different states that have different governments.
Exactly, right? They wouldn't really have that internationally so much, would they? That's one thing that's unique to America is you can live in different states and have a very different experience of the government in terms of taxes and regulations and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Whereas internationally, I mean, I'm just thinking there's places I like being around cities. If it's I think Nashville is a great mix. I also like visiting New York. I don't know if I would want to live in New York right now. But
California is a great place to visit too. I tell people that all the time. California is awesome. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful states in the union. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the different climates. It's got the tallest trees in the world, the oldest trees in the world, and the widest trees in the world. Isn't that amazing? So there's a lot of cool history in California. It's beautiful. Obviously, Yosemite and things like that. The beach, the coastlines, great places to live. But that's why one of the sad things about it's kind of turning into like the makeup of a third world country. It's obviously not that, but the idea of like no middle class and that kind of stuff.
Well, what's turning it into that?
Well, it's so I think it's the politics, of course. The difference between North Korea and South Korea, it's just politics. The people are the same, so it makes sense. Politics does matter. I know the trend of people moving out of California are middle, low income, uneducated class, and the trend of people moving into California are high earners, people like elite workers. So that's what's been happening the last 10 years. And so that's eroding the middle class too. But yeah, it's the high taxes. It's things like that. Yeah, it's definitely politics.
Regulation, part of it too. I know there was a lot of people that were tired of being locked down. Apparently,
yeah.
Well, when did you move here again?
Yeah, so 5 months ago. So I was
out at the beginning of COVID.
I was out at the beginning, but the funny part, or the interesting part that I want to see maybe in like 5 months from now is the data of how the COVID pandemic exacerbated people moving out of California or people from other states too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about you saying like high earners, upper class people moving into California, that seems to go against logic, doesn't it? Like, why wouldn't they move to lower tax states?
Yeah. I wonder. I think it's because of majority of the jobs in California are those high income jobs. I think the high earners that are moving out of California are the business owners. Like corporations are moving out, but like the earners themselves. I know there's cities. There's a city in Orange County that it's filled with just like South Koreans, Chinese, super like educated, super high income people, and there's no like normal kind of middle class like whites there at all. Like Irvine is mostly Koreans, and they're like people that are extremely successful, and so it's an interesting phenomenon that you'd see that in that way.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So are they living there because they figured out how to get around the tax code in California, and they figured out how to live there and still not be taxed either at their business level or personal level? Somehow they're getting around the taxes, like having either like their company's either international or it's in another headquartered in another state, but they happen to live here. Is that what they're doing, or they're so wealthy and making such a great income that they don't care to pay the higher taxes in California?
Yeah, I wonder. It's probably both. I know majority, like California hasn't lost, it's only the net loss of immigration like last 10 years. It was only like 90,000. So like, it's not like, even though there's been a ridiculous amount of people leaving, there's also been a lot of people moving in, but most of those people are out of country migrants. So
that are moving in.
Yeah. And a lot of those aren't high earners. So, but they're moving in because there's so many established enclaves where people can go and they, places like Little Saigon in Orange County, like, so, and they don't have to, it's these migrant enclaves that are easier for you to make the move. So it makes sense, even though California is a terrible place in terms of like economics to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's an easy place to migrate into.
Yeah. For a lot of for the immigrant communities.
I see.
Yeah.
To your point, I saw a stat before you got here. It was like 2017 or 2018, 700,000 people had moved out of California, but 500,000 people had moved in.
Yeah,
so that year it was a net loss of 200,000.
Yeah, so people are still moving there, which is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. This stat is hard to believe, and I think it kind of speaks to the politics a little bit. So,
right,
on an annual basis, California spends more in what was it, Andrew? It's in the Evernote there. California, it's not Medicare.
Medicaid. Yeah, that's California. It's California's Medicare.
Welfare.
Yeah.
California spends more annually on welfare than Oregon, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Hawaii combined.
Yeah.
And that includes
That is
Texas.
so much.
The
And that
big
includes
state, Texas.
Yeah.
I wonder what the population comparison is between California and all those other states.
It's a lot. I mean, California's 40 million.
40 million.
Yeah, I believe.
Of Americans, of America's 335 million.
Yeah. So
California is about 15% of our entire country.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at a stat like that, is it possible that the population of California is equal to all those states I just listed off as well? And if that's the case, well, then of course they're going to spend,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, about that much.
Right. Yeah.
So
definitely.
that might be one of those areas where the statistic it's accurate, but it also is, it helps the cause of that video.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think another interesting thing about the whole interstate migration that's happening is people are moving for political reasons, like the political climate. Not even like what politics are doing, but like just there's a great study. I think it was done in the end of 2019. It was Berkeley, UC Berkeley, into IGS, the Intergovernmental Studies, and they had on that survey like that signifier, like, oh, are you moving for political climate? And they were baffled about how high it was. And so I think they said out of all California voters, not just people, but just the voters, 50% have considered or somewhat seriously considered or somewhat considered moving out of California. 50% of the voters.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the question that comes up is who's moving out of California, right? Are people Californiaing Texas, right? Don't California my Texas.
Yes.
Or, is it turning that way? And so that's an interesting phenomenon because I've seen great arguments for either side. That majority of people moving out of California are actually more conservative Republican voters moving for political climates. But I think in that study, they had seen that out of, I think it was like 50% or 60% of very conservative voters wanted to move out of California. And I think very liberal voters was like at like 20%.
Okay.
So it seems like the trend is majority. And then also there was an exit poll in 2018 with the Senate race in California, Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. The exit poll showed out-of-state people that have moved that year. So it wasn't just California, but out-of-state, they were 15% favoring Ted Cruz. So out-of-state voters were actually 50% up on Ted Cruz, which is really kind of goes against the narrative like Texas is moving blue and that kind of thing. So it's very interesting.
You're saying that of the people that came into Texas, that moved into Texas,
Yeah, from other states.
The majority of those people that moved into Texas were favoring Ted Cruz, a Republican,
Yeah.
over his Democratic opponent.
Yeah.
So then that would speak to there being not maybe a huge pressing threat on Texas becoming the next California.
Yeah, people.
Right.
But
there's still that possibility.
There is.
Has
Yeah,
to
people have said is Texas is obviously becoming bluer. If you look at like the rate at like George W. Bush won it, and then like looking at like Romney and McCain, and as it goes, it's lesser. They're winning by lesser points.
Texas.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I think a lot of it's drummed up by political parties because if you say that, it energizes the base. So they were saying, so that's a thing too, where it's not really, it's politically expedient to say, oh, it's turning blue. Like you need to try harder and we'll get it to go that way. So I think they were talking about like the TV ads that the Biden campaign was purchasing in Texas. And then, it was like this big deal, like it was millions of dollars. So he thinks he can win it. And then like right after they canceled the ads, which there's no penalty to cancel ads. So that happens a lot of times where they'll get a bunch of reservations and then just cancel right after on both sides. It's like a dinner reservation though. You don't get penalized for it. So,
but you can cause a certain reaction.
Yeah.
Maybe even a chain reaction by announcing that you've bought all these TV ads in a particular state.
Sure.
Maybe run a couple of them, cancel the rest.
Yeah.
You never intended to spend those millions.
Exactly. Because like in California, right? Everyone knew, all like the conservative voters, we always made the jokes and complained how our votes didn't matter, right? Electoral college, it's never going to matter. My dad's like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Your vote's going to matter now in Tennessee or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really funny. Like he's jealous of that. So,
yeah.
But if someone were to come into California and say, wow, California's really close to going red this year. And so then all those voters would be energized and be like, oh my gosh, I need to vote now.
Right.
Because my vote actually might matter. So that happens. It's a political weapon.